Good morning, everyone. This is Sarah Carino, your first reporter for today. Our topic is entitled Social Context and Social Emotional Development. But before we start, let me tell you one of the popular lines of Erik Erikson. He said, in the end, the power behind development is life. Very indeed. So, to start, let me introduce to you our chapter outline for today. And we have three topics to discuss, which is first, contemporary theories. Under that are the Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory and Erikson's lifespan development theory. Second topic is social context of development. Under that are families, peers, and schools. And for our last topic to discuss for today, we have social emotional development, which is under that we have to discuss the self, moral development, and coping with stress. Of course, uh, we will also want to introduce to you or discuss to you our learning objectives. First objective is to describe two contemporary perspectives on social emotional development, which are the von Brenner's ecological theory and Erikson's lifespan development theory. Second is to discuss how the social context of families, peers, and schools are linked with social emotional development. And third, to explain these aspects of children's emotional development, we will discuss the topics about self-esteem, identity, moral development, and coping with stress. So to start, uh, let me start with the first topic, which is about contemporary theories. In this chapter, we will focus on two main theories, which is first Berners Theory ecological theory, and Erikson's lifespan development theory. These two theories were chosen for the comprehensive way they address the social context in which children develop, which is later will be discussed by Berners Theory. And Eriksson's theory will be able to explain the major changes in children's social emotional development. Let's move on with Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. The ecological theory developed by Yuri Bronfenbrenner in 1917 to 2005 primarily focuses on the social context in which children live and the people who influence their development. Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory consists of five environmental systems that range from close interpersonal interactions to broad-based influences of culture. The five systems are the microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, macrosystem, and chronosystem. Next, to elaborate the five environmental systems, uh, first let's go with the microsystem. Microsystem is a setting in which the individual spends considerable time, such as the student's family, peers, school, and neighborhood. Within these microsystems, the individual has direct interactions with parents, teachers, peers, and others. Well, for Bronfenbrenner, he said that student is not a passive recipient of experiences, but someone who reciprocally interacts with others and helps to construct the microsystem. Second, we have the mesosystem. The mesosystem involves linkages between microsystems. For example, we have the connections between family experiences and school experiences, and between family and peers. Next is the exosystem. The ecosystem is at work when experiences in another setting influence what students and teachers experience in the immediate context. For example, consider the school and park supervisory boards in a community. They have strong roles in determining the quality of schools, parks, recreation facilities, and libraries, which can help or hinder a children's development. Next, we have macro system. The macro system involves the broader culture. Culture is a very broad term that includes the roles of ethnicity and socio-economic factors in children's development. It's the broadest context in which students and teachers live, including the society's values and customs. For example, some cultures, such as rural China and Iran, emphasize traditional gender roles. They have specific schools for all boys and schools for all girls. And that's how they establish education because um, that's how their culture's ways. And for the last environmental system, we have the Kronos system. This includes the socio-historical conditions of students' development. For example, the lives of children today are different in many ways from when their parents and grandparents were children. Well, today's children are more likely to be in childcare, use computers, and grow up in new kinds of dispersed, deconcentrated cities that are not quite urban, rural, or suburban. I mean, the education in the past is very different in the education today. There is still learning, but the process within that our learning is very different. For example, we always heard our parents to say na among bags sa una is plastic bags, then ang among teacher sa una kay always may ginabunal sa kamot or ginalo si among dalunggan if saba mi or mamali mi answer. Which is now is today is far different from that because first most parents can afford to buy even very affordable bags for their child or children. And next is today it is illegal to hurt a child a children even in a very little way because that's part of our law, which is very different from the past because that's how we establish education for today. Now, let us move on in using these concepts in application of educating children. And let me discuss to you the strategies of educating children based on Berners Theory. So, first, think about the child as embedded in a number of environmental systems and influences. This includes schools and teachers, parents and siblings, the community and neighborhood, peers and friends, the media, religion, and culture. In this way, the instructor or the teacher would be able to recognize the child's manner of interacting with others. By identifying this factor, the teacher would be able to establish a student teacher relationship and reach out to the child in a way that is soothing or comforting to the child. As a result, when the teacher asks the student to respond in front of the class, the child may feel more at ease or be more likely to ask the teacher questions about the lesson. It would also help the teacher to identify the person who can help the child to learn aside from the teacher itself because of course teachers need help from parents. And By identifying this factor, the teacher will be able to know if the student is comfortable in communicating or in interacting with his mother or with her mother or with his father or her father, which is can help the teacher to ask for some assistance in helping the child to learn. And it would also help a teacher to identify children's issues that are hindering their ability to learn. For example, if a child is having a problem at home, such as hearing daily arguments from his parents, this may lead to a child silence in class because it might be that not all the students who are silent in a class are just introverts or shy. Uh, there could be a possible reason that a children is having thoughts in his or her mind that causing a trouble in focusing in the class, such as um, arguments between parents or abusive parents. And with that, the teacher can help the student to feel at ease, not just in the class, but also in his or her main environment, which would really influence his or her learning. So next, pay attention to the connection between schools and families. Build these connections through formal and informal outreach. So there are number of ways to do this, including inviting parents into the classroom for special occasions, such as open houses, asking parents to read with their children at home, bringing parents into the school as volunteers, speakers or room parents, and holding parent or child activity nights. Because with this, helping the children to establish a good relationship with the people that surrounds them will help them boost their confidence and would be able to feel at ease when asking for their help. Am I right? So, third, recognize the importance of the community, socioeconomic status, and culture in a child's development. Because this broader social context can have powerful influences on the child's development. Because identifying the way they live this life will help the teacher to also identify what discourages or encourages the student to have interest in learning new things aside from the things they already know and do. It would also aid students learning, such as asking for an organization to supply the school's needs like laboratory equipment, books, and many more that will help the teaching process be more interesting to the students. And by inviting helping professionals to inform the students about their profession or inviting different professions to educate children about their profession, which will help the student identify their field and interest in the near future. So, um, one more thing, one more thing I forgot. For the third topic is that encouraging the student to help their community, such as cleaning projects or feeding program, will also establish students' character in applying their learnings in the real world, which is um, very helpful because they would be able to express it practically, which will help them to sustain that information or that knowledge to their minds. So, to really move on with the topic, let's go with the evaluating prawn friend Berners theory. It says here that it provides one of the few theoretical frameworks for systematically examining social context on both micro and macro levels, bridging the gap between behavioral theories that focus on small settings and anthropological theories that analyze larger settings. Well, Berners Theory has been instrumental in showing how different contexts of children's lives are interconnected. As we have just discussed, teachers need to consider not just what goes on in the classroom, but also what happens in students' families, neighborhoods, and even within their peer groups. There is also criticisms of Bronfenbrenner's theory. It says it gives too little attention to biological and cognitive factors in children's development, and it does not address the step-by-step developmental changes of a person. That is why I will introduce to you the theory of Erikson to help us address the step-by-step developmental changes of a person. Erikson's lifespan development theory. Bronfenbrenner's analysis of the social context in which children grow and the people that matter in their lives is facilitated. Well, the theory of, let me have this, okay. The theory of Erikson in 1902 to 1994 um, presents a developmental view of people's lives in stages. There are 8 stages of human development according to Erikson, which unfold as people go through the human lifespan. Each stage consists of a developmental task that confronts individuals with a crisis. Well, I do believe that everyone remembers that each crisis, according to Erikson, is a turning point of increased vulnerability and increased potential. Because the more successfully a person resolves its crisis, the more psychologically healthy the individual will be. Right? Okay. To elaborate the 8 stages of human development, let me begin with trust versus mistrust. This is the first psychological stage. It occurs in the first year of life. The development of trust requires warm and nurturing caregiving. The positive outcome when the infant will be able to resolve the crisis in this stage is a sense of security and minimal fear, which on the other hand, if failed, mistrust grows when infants are handled negatively or neglected. Second, we have, okay, nag-loading ang laptop. Okay, next we have autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is the second psychological stage. It occurs in late infancy and the toddler years. After gaining trust in their caregivers, infants begin to discover that their behaviors is their own. They assert their independence and realize their own will. Well, infants who are unnecessarily punished or treated unfairly, they will develop a sense of shame and doubt. So let's be careful in handling uh, toddlers. Okay, next one is about initiative versus guilt. This is the third psychosocial stage. It corresponds to early childhood, about 3 to 5 years of age. As young children experience a widening social world, they are challenged more than they were as infants. to cope with these challenges, they need to engage in active, pers- purposeful behavior that involves initiative. Because if children perceive themselves as irresponsible or are made to feel unnecessarily guilty, they experience negative guilt feelings, which will um, affect their existence. So, may I ask Miss Lumando to read this? Thank you, Miss Lumando. Thank you so much. Okay, for the next stage, we have industry versus inferiority. This is the fourth psychological stage. It corresponds approximately with the elementary school years from 6 years of age until puberty or early adolescence. As they move into the elementary school years, children direct their energy towards mastering knowledge and intellectual skills. Well, the risk of developing a sense of inferiority, unproductiveness, and incompetence during the elementary school years is real. Um, for an example, may I ask Miss Dihumo to read this? Yes, Miss Dihumo. Thank you, Miss Dihumo, for reading. Okay, so for the next stage, we have identity versus identity confusion. This is the fifth psychosocial stage. It corresponds to the adolescent years. Adolescents try to find out who they are, what they are all about, and where they are going in life. They are confronted with many new rules and adult statuses, such as vocational and even romantic. Adolescents need to be allowed to explore different paths to attain a healthy identity. Well, they will remain confused about their identity if they do not appropriately explore different roles and fail to figure out a meaningful future direction. So, again, for an example, let me call on Miss Austin to read this. Miss Austin, thank you, Miss Austin. Okay, for another example, may I ask Miss Fernandez to read this? Mr. Fernandez to read this. Mr. Fernandez, thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Okay, for the sixth stage of human development, according to Eriksson, we have intimacy versus isolation. This is a sixth psychosocial stage. It corresponds to the early adult years. The 20s and 30s developmental task is to form positive close relationship with others. Well, in the stage, the threat at this point is that you won't be able to develop an intimate relationship with a romantic partner or a friend, and you'll end up socially isolated. Okay. Next, seventh stage is the generativity versus stagnation. This is the seventh psychosocial stage again. It corresponds to the middle adulthood years, the 40s and 50s. Generativity means transmitting something positive to the next generation. This can involve such roles as parenting and teaching, through which adults assist the next generation in developing useful lives. Well, the danger at this stage is that the individual may feel stuck or as if they have done little to help the next generation. So, for our last and final stage of human development, we have integrity versus despair. It corresponds to the late adulthood years, the 60s until death. Older adults tend to review their lives, reflecting on what they have done. Well, they build a sense of integrity if the retrospective reviews are positive, or how they review the past is positive. That is, they consider their lives to be well integrated and worthwhile. But when older people's past memories are always negative, they become despair. So, to educate everyone about the strategies of educating children based on Erikson's theory, okay, let me show you this. First, encourage initiative in young children. Children in preschool and early childhood education classes should have plenty of opportunities to discover their surroundings. They should be able to choose the most of their tasks. Because if their requests to participate in such events are appropriate, well, they should be allowed or granted. Because at this stage, children enjoy playing. It is not only beneficial to their social emotional development, but it is also an essential medium for their cognitive development. Well, teachers can provide materials that will trigger their interest and encourage them to use their imagination. And we could also encourage imaginative play and social play with their peers. And we could also assist children in taking responsibility in returning toys and things to their proper places after they have been used. Well, with this, uh, to avoid developing high levels of guilt and anxiety in adolescents, well, criticism should be held to a minimum level because it might it might affect their confidence or how they perceive themselves. Give them cognitively appropriate tasks. For example, don't frustrate young children by making them sit for long period of time doing academic paper and pencil tasks. Just give them um, enough time to learn and to process everything they have learned because everything in a child is new and new things are hard to process, so let's give them a little break to process the learning. Second, promote industry and in elementary school children. Teachers carry a particular responsibility for the growth of industry in children. Well, Erickson believed that teachers could create an environment in which students were excited about learning. Children in elementary school have an irresistible desire to learn. Most children enter elementary school with a sense of wonderful and desire to succeed. Because according to Erickson, it is important for teachers to encourage this desire for excellence and interest in their students. We could give students meaningful, challenging, but not exhausting tasks and responsibilities. Because students will not learn to be responsible if they are constantly given assignments that are too hard for them or too uh, too heavy for them. Be firm in your request. Let us be firm in our request for the students to be productive, but don't be too harsh. Enable students to correct honest mistakes and ensure that every student has numerous opportunities to success despite with mistakes or failures. Okay, second, stimulate identity exploration in adolescence. Recognize that the identity of the student is multifaceted. Encourage essays from adolescents on topics such as vocational goals, 5 years after, intellectual achievement, hobbies, sports, music, and other interests in order for them to learn more about who they are and what they want to do with their lives. Encourage adolescents to think for themselves and freely express their own opinions by listening to, reading about, and participating in debates on religious, political, and even in ideological topics, because this will allow them to consider multiple perspectives. Understand that adolescent appearance, language, preferences, and peer group choices are always in which they express their developing identities. So that's how we would identify the character of an adolescent, by seeing their preferences. Okay, next is examine your life as a teacher through the lens of Erikson's 8 stages. Of course, in explaining these strategies for educating children based on Erikson's theory, this is not just all about the students or how would the teacher interact with the students, but it is also all about how would the teacher grow as a teacher, because our effective teaching career may be an important part of our overall identity. Well, it is encouraged to develop positive relationships with our partner, one or more friends, and other teachers or mentors, all of which can be extremely rewarding and strengthen us as teachers' identity. Next, benefit from the characteristics of some of Erikson's other stages. Well, again, competent teachers encourage students to believe in themselves, take action, work hard, model mastery, and are inspired to leave a positive legacy for the next generation, which is under the generativity versus stagnation. Okay, so for the last uh, subtopic about contemporary theories, we need to evaluate Erikson's theory. So this is the evaluation. According to this, Erikson's theory captures some of life's key socio-emotional tasks and places them in a developmental framework. His concept of identity is especially helpful in understanding older adolescents and college students. His overall theory was a critical force in forging our current view of human development as lifelong rather than being restricted only to childhood. Well, aside from that, or despite from that, there are still criticisms in Erikson's theory. So some experts point out that his stages are too rigid. Lifespan development pioneer Bernice Naugarten in 1988 says that identity, intimacy, independence, and many other aspects of social emotional development are not like beads on a string that appear in neatly packaged age intervals. Rather, they are important issues throughout most of our lives. Well, there's a point. Bernice Garden has a point, because even though we struggle in that stage about our identity, uh, there are days that after resolving that identity, there's something that would flashbacks, right? Just like today, we are not in the current stage of mistrust versus trust, but there are still um, aspects, or there are still situations that would affect our trust on a person. So that's what Benis Nogarten um, believes. Well, aside from that, Erikson's theory is still very great in helping the teachers to identify more wonderful learning strategies, and also for friend Berners Theory. So that's the end of contemporary theories topic. So thank you everyone, and I will pass this on the next reporter. Thank you.